I'm Leon Sheets, a pig farmer from Chickasaw County in northeast Iowa with an Ionia address. I'm over at my farm this afternoon talking a little bit about safety when walking and working in our barns. Is that we've talked about the issues of the foaming pits and safety, particularly when we're pumping. But there's another time that's starting to show up drastically. It's been when we're doing maintenance or washing in our barns. Is that the simplicity of just walking in and getting the washer out, all of a sudden there's things that happen that we need to take particular attention of. Let me reiterate what happened on my farm last September 15th, 2014. We'd finished loading out my barn, which is 4 rooms with a 8-foot work area in the center. And the previous week I'd washed out 2 of the rooms. One of the rooms, like a lot of the barns with the foaming issue, had some foam on it. The other 3 were fine. Late in the afternoon, about 4 o'clock, I came back to check the barns and to readjust the soakers for the night. And on a whim, in that work area, which is 8 by 40 with a standing pilot, I looked at the washer and I said, I will just wash this floor, just get it soaking wet. Just take the wand and 8 by 40, a couple 3 passes with the washer and I'm out. I wasn't at it very long, and all of a sudden there was a ball of fire, a loud kaboom. And I really couldn't see, the door was blown open, and drastic changes happened in my life. By the time I put the pressure washer down, I'd knocked some fire down, turned the machine off. My biosecurity bench wasn't there, and I don't know whether the door was blown open or blown off, but it wasn't there. Is that my coveralls had hot cinders on the spot. I could see it was glowing. And by the time I did the stop, drop, and roll, got the generator shed and did safety protocols of getting the power turned off, the stop on the generator, and then going ahead and getting the LP turned off. And then it was time to call 911. Is that the fire itself in that work area, the flames were put out. But something happened with the gas. Is that before I got to the end of the building, black smoke was coming out. I could hear the ceiling talk to it. Precautions of what I could have done different. On just a moment, I could have reached behind and put on my safety phones, but it was only going to be just a minute that I was in there. Secondly, the door should have been open or the pilot should have been turned off. But it's what we found with the foaming pit issue. How does this relate to pumping? We've had issues in the past with pumping, and some guidelines for working in our buildings is that always have the minimum fan up and running, probably in the second stage minimum of second stage fan running, before you're going to do anything other than walk the pigs. Is that if you take it to off or minimal, then turn the heaters off, because we're finding that even barns without challenges of a foaming pit, is that gas builds up for a period of time, the composition and the chemistry takes over, and when chemistry and the physical properties, things can go boom or drastic things happen. And sometimes people and pigs get in the way. Buildings are replaceable, but people are not. And we've had some unfortunate inches back in there, and I'm here, no more, nobody else, people. So when you're in the barn, going to do something other than just walk the pigs, get the fans up running 10, 15, 20 minutes before you do anything. If the building has been, fans have been in the off position, make certain that the heaters have been off, unplugged if they're electronic ignition, and the pilot's out. That's when things will start to happen, when those pilots kicked on. When I was, of my 10 days in Iowa City in the burn unit, and then 9 days in recovery, you have times to think about these things. One of the practitioners indicated in a follow-up session is that one of the patients they treated from this similar type of accident had said the last thing they remembered was click. And to this day yet, every time I hear a heater click on in a barn, I shudder and my back of my hair goes back up. It's still a follow-through effect. So you've got the air movement, whether that's in when you're going to wash, you're going to do maintenance, or particularly, gentlemen, we're standing here today, we're going to do pumping, is that have the barn owner, operator, get those fans running before you pop the covers. Make certain the maximum ventilation is on when you're pumping. Get the breakers turned off, get the heaters off, get what air moving you can go through the barn. That's key important. I've attended enough of the nutrient management sessions that all of a sudden the tendency to want to doze through a session is pretty strong. This is not one of those to sit back, guys. Is that if you don't survive an incident in the barn, you're going to have a long sleep. and we don't want that. So pay attention on how you handle is that get the air movement, your careful moving equipment. For those of you that think having a cigarette while you're pumping and hanging over the pit, not one of the brighter ideas you've come across back in there with. Even the possibility of all of a sudden the pump drags across the concrete going in, does that make a little spark? Yes, it does. It makes me nervous now. So particularly if that pit is foaming, make certain all precautions is that the breaker box is off, the feed switches are off, the lights are off, as many things that don't have to be running for a period of time is going. If it's a naturally ventilated, no mechanical movement, get the curtains down. It's kind of hard to wait for a breeze, but it might be the best in your interest in there to get a breeze going. You've got to have air movement. When we're in the pumping, we know that as the material goes down, is that all of a sudden the gases are going to form on that empty space that you've created. Hydrogen sulfide is one that'll come to mind. That's going to require, after you quit removing material, that ventilation system stays on for a couple hours at least after that, after you quit your actions for the day, so that airspace has plenty of time to aerate and bring that barn back to a normal, safe level for you and the pig's comfort. We have a tendency, as soon as we pump and pull the pits, we're through for the night, but the pigs have to stay there. And over the years, there's been enough instances that you come back in the morning, you got dead pigs. What happened? No more. Well, there's things that we can do to prevent the loss of animals in the barn, but also the loss of humans when we're back in the barn. So just some precautions is that when we're handling materials, utmost is caution. The caution and safety, and I've been working in deep pitted barns for over 35 years. Maybe we've become a little complacent because it's just natural, we do it every day, but all of a sudden we start doing something that makes a movement downstairs underneath the pit. All of a sudden we have got to take the precautions and safety procedures that are going to need to become as automatic as opening the door in the morning. You want a good outcome, people, and a little precaution, whether we're turning around and pumping, whether you're washing. And the number of people now that are doing maintenance in the pit, the barns are getting old enough, is that several producers have shared with me that when they've been welding on gates, they've seen a blue glow in the bottom of the pit. And I really shudder. And people, if you got to weld, get it outside the weld. If you insist upon welding in the barn, make certain before you leave the house that morning, you tell your loved ones goodbye, is because that's probably going to happen. Seeing that blue glow down in the pit is that it's just one move away from kaboom, and things changed. So people, the take home from today is that caution when you're in that barn doing anything other than just walking. You get the fan speed up, you know where your heaters can come on or not before you start anything, that when it's been quiet. If you're pumping, plenty of air movement before you start, during your pumping, and after your pumping. If you're going to be washing, you have got plenty of air movement in and while you're doing the procedure. You know if the heaters can or cannot be on. And if you're doing maintenance, extra precautions is that get that air movement, the very same thing, just as cold, and you don't want to kick the fans on. But we've had issues where just during moving the feeders and dumping in the feeder has created enough bubbles with the heater back in there going. So take home today, no more, nobody else. I still shudder when I hear of issues in the barn. Nobody else. People, be careful out there. Ear protection's on back in there, and all of a sudden pretty soon you're kind of itching and digging, but is how much of this is that for 18 months to 2 years is it's going to be problematic. Sunscreen is on my face. Is the extent was over 20% second and third degree burns, which it doesn't look like it, but the face was completely over. My eyes were swollen shut, and for the first 3 days they were talking about grafting on my face, and they're really pleased how it turned out. Is that also those coveralls, those polyester coveralls, that if I would have had long sleeve coveralls on, this wouldn't have happened till here. My palms are fine because I had my hands wrapped around the pressure washer, which gave me part of my healing process. I could use my fingers. Is that during the healing when they grafted, is that they took the skin from here on both legs and off the side, which That's what recreated the time in rehab. That new skin, I had to basically learn and get it to stretch and to walk in there. It wasn't get up and walk. It was slow, easy steps. And all of a sudden, when you can only get your foot up or you can only go that high, how tall are the gates in the barn? 34, 36, 38 inches. To all of a sudden to make that swing and to walk your barns, if you've got to stop and open every gate to walk the pen and come out, it increases your time. Of course, the first couple days in the hospital, you're asking when can you get up and go, and they're talking, I don't know if you'll be back doing your career or not, Leon. Is that gets to be kind of mind-sobering back in there. But where you have 20% of the burns, well, the coveralls in where it melded, the back was blistered really bad. And they didn't think they'd have to do that, but the marks are still on the back yet. If you're going to graft on 20% of your body, think of that you're going to need 25 to 30% to borrow skin from. So all of a sudden, now we're looking at about 50% of my body after the fact had damage done to it. So that lengthened up some of the healing time, and then the increased downtime a little bit, that the burns kind of healed up okay. It was the skin where they taken the skin off was that really sore and created the problems that to get back in. So about 5 weeks I was back in the barn, and I don't think my doctors were all that happy that I was back in quite a bit. But I'm an agriculture, I'm a farmer, and when it's harvest time, we don't stay down for much of anything, but you make certain that you're good enough so it's not going to be, you don't do more damage than what you've already done. But it was one we needed to get back and going, and that's just what we did. So your friends and neighbors are really good about helping your chores for a while, but after about 5 weeks, they're kind of commencing, they're getting a little tired of being a good neighbor in there. So I thank those folks for helping me get back uncovered. So I've got some reminders of scars to look at every day, which it can be, you know, a hindrance, but it's a reminder back in there is that it's as automatic as opening that door. That is what we're going to do back in there, that we get the fans on and those type of safety precautions go in place.